Hi, welcome to this edition of Dry January. And this week I want to talk about dry sprinklers, so dry barrel sprinklers. And these are pretty useful. There might be a case in which you need to provide sprinkler protection to an unconditioned area, but you don't necessarily want to have an additional dry sprinkler system. So maybe you've got a small loading dock, or you're in a residential occupancy and you're trying to protect a balcony, or you have a refrigerated area like a cooler that you only need a few heads to protect. That's where you could use a dry barrel sprinkler. And the way these work is I'm actually gonna, if you look below, we're gonna go into an annex section in 13, NFPA 13 here. I wanna show this picture. This shows the installation of this dry barrel. This actually, before we get going on that, dry barrel sprinklers can come in many different types. You can have pendant, so this is an example of a pendant, so they're going to drop down into the unconditioned space. Or you could have a sidewall. This is an example of a sidewall. That's the example shown below, is a sidewall sprinkler. And the way it works is, if you look below, we've got our, let's flip that there. So we've got our sprinkler on this end, and we've got our water-filled pipe that provides water on this side. And the entire sprinkler barrel here is dry. Our sealing surface actually occurs on this end. This is all full of air. When the sprinkler activates, it's going to cause either a barrel or there could be like a rod in here, all depends on the manufacturer, will cause this sealing surface here to drop or to hinge out, and then will allow water to spray out. Now you see, so they go from the conditioned space into the unconditioned space. And you can get these in many different lengths. This is a pretty short one. I showed here this sidewall. This one's pretty long here. And the length is important for a couple different things. The length is important if you're going through a thick wall, you need to have it long. But then the other thing is, we need to make sure that we're separating the cold, unconditioned space from that water to a point where we're not going to cause conduction of the heat from the water to cause this to freeze. So the way that we determine what the minimum exposed barrel length here, if you see below this X, that minimum exposed barrel length is based on the temperature of the conditioned space and the temperature of the unconditioned space. So if we go back, if we're in 15.3, which goes over dry sprinklers, there's a table here. Basically, the table is going to say, based on the ambient temperature of the exposed side, so basically the sprinkler side, versus the exposed side in your conditioned space of the barrel, how much of that barrel needs to be exposed. So we'll use the example of 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Say the sprinkler's in 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm only heating my conditioned space to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Just that minimum temperature that I have to keep it to stay as a wet system. I have to have 12 inches of this barrel exposed. Now, if I increase that temperature up to 50, I could go down to 3 inches exposed. And if I go up to 60 degrees, I don't have to have any of that barrel exposed. So that's something to pay attention to when you're using dry sprinklers. Dry barrel sprinklers is they're very useful, but you got to pay attention to the exposed barrel length, which means you've got to be paying attention to how much, what temperature you're keeping that conditioned space. It's pretty important. And then also that ambient temperature that this is being exposed to. So those are all things that are important to pay attention to. Dry barrel sprinklers are extremely useful if you've got situations, again, like those small refrigerators, loading docks, things like that you can't necessarily keep conditioned. If you're interested in learning more about dry sprinklers, I've got a blog here. I'll link it below. This one's written by Brian O'Connor, one of my teammates. It goes over a lot of the things I was talking about with that minimum barrel exposed length, and then some of the the other installation requirements and considerations for dry sprinklers. So if you're interested in learning more, take a look at that blog and stay posted for some more Dry January videos. Thanks.